The cargo doors opened with a loud hiss. Jake Morrison stepped out onto the wet landing platform of Station Kepler 9. Rain poured down from the dark metal ceiling above. The station floated in empty space between stars. It was a place where traders from many different worlds came to buy and sell things. Nobody asked questions here. Jake had been running cargo for 3 years. He knew to keep his head down and mind his own business, but then he heard something that changed everything. A small cry came from the old warehouse area. It was soft and sad. The sound cut through the noise of the station. Jake stopped walking. His hand moved to the gun on his belt. The warehouse district was supposed to be empty. A coolant leak 2 months ago had forced everyone out. Nothing should be alive in there. Jake knew he should walk away, but he did not. He followed the sound. Inside the warehouse it was dark and smelled bad. Old boxes lay scattered on the floor. The emergency lights flickered on and off. The crying got louder as Jake walked deeper inside. His boots splashed through puddles of dirty water. Then he saw it. Behind a broken metal beam was a small creature. It was no bigger than a cat. Its fur was black and dirty with lines of silver down its back. 4 eyes looked up at Jake, 2 big ones and 2 smaller ones. The creature was shaking hard. Jake could see its ribs under the thin fur. Jake had seen enough alien species to know what this was. A Vexar kit, a baby. Adult Vexar were almost 8 feet tall with sharp claws and strong jaws. They were smart and deadly. The Kryn Empire used them as soldiers. They came from a dangerous planet called Vexaris Prime. What was a Vexar baby doing here alone? The kit made that sad sound again. Its 4 eyes watched Jake closely. It was ready to fight even though it was clearly dying. Jake could see a bad cut on its back leg. The wound looked infected. Jake should have left. The Kryn Empire would be angry if a human took one of their military animals. Keeping a Vexar was dangerous. But when Jake looked into those scared eyes, he saw something he knew well. The feeling of being thrown away, left behind. He had felt that way when he left Earth. Slowly, Jake took off his jacket. He got down low, moving carefully. The kit hissed at him. From a big Vexar, that sound would be scary. From something this small, it just sounded sad. Jake kept talking in a soft voice. "Hey there, little one. I will not hurt you. You need help. You look really sick." The kit stopped hissing. Jake could see it wanted help but was afraid. He kept talking and held out his jacket. "Nobody else is coming for you, right? Someone left you here to die. I know how that feels." Time seemed to stop. Then the kit moved one tiny paw toward the jacket. Jake held very still. The kit took another step, then another. Soon it was close enough for Jake to see the dried blood in its fur and smell the infection. Jake wrapped the jacket around the kit and picked it up gently. The creature did not fight. Instead, it pressed against his chest. The crying finally stopped as warmth covered its small body. Jake carried the kit back to his ship. He knew this was a bad idea. The Empire would look for it. Security cameras might have seen him. Every instinct told him to put the kit back and walk away. But as he felt the fast heartbeat against his chest and saw the trust starting to grow in those 4 alien eyes, Jake made his choice. He was keeping it. The medical room on the Dawn Runner was small. Jake put the kit on the table and started checking it with his scanner. The results were bad. The kit was starving and dehydrated. The leg wound was infected. It also looked like someone had given it drugs that were wearing off. Someone had drugged this baby and dumped it in that warehouse to die. Jake worked carefully, cleaning the wounds and giving medicine from his supplies. The kit watched him with those 4 eyes the whole time. There was intelligence there. More than he expected from something so young. Vexar were smart, but most people only saw them as dangerous predators. "You need a name," Jake said as he wrapped a bandage around the infected leg. "I cannot keep calling you Kit. Let me think. You are tough. You survived something that should have killed you. Rogue. How about that? Because you are going to grow up outside their system now." The kit made a soft chirping sound. Jake decided that meant yes. Over the next 3 days, Jake watched Rogue get better. The kit ate a lot, consuming 3 times its body weight in the protein paste Jake made from his supplies. The leg wound healed fast. Vexar bodies were built to survive. But what interested Jake most was how Rogue acted. The kit followed him everywhere. Small paws padded behind him through the halls. When Jake slept, Rogue curled up at the end of his bed. Those 4 eyes watched the door like a guard. The kit was bonding with him, seeing him as family. Jake read about Vexar in the ship computer. He learned about their social groups and how they formed packs. For Vexar, the pack was everything. They bonded deeply with their chosen family and would die to protect them. Adult Vexar in the Empire military were raised in strict training camps from birth. They were taught to see their units as pack. Rogue had lost that chance. Whatever had happened, whoever had thrown the kid away had stolen its normal life. Jake felt angry about it, even though he knew he was now guilty of stealing Empire property. The first real problem came when the Dawn Runner docked at Frontier Station 12 for fuel. Jake planned to hide Rogue on the ship, but the station scanners detected the unusual life form. Within minutes, a Kryn Empire patrol officer came to his door. Officer Krill was tall with green and gray scales. His three-fingered hand rested on his weapon as he looked at his wrist computer. The scanner shows a Vexar life sign on your ship. You must show me the creature for inspection and recording. Jake had expected this. He met Officer Krill at the door with Rogue in his arms. The kit had grown bigger in just 3 days. Now it was the size of a medium dog, but still clearly a baby. I found this kit left to die on Station Kepler 9. It was sick, so I helped it. Is there a problem? Officer Krill's scales changed color with surprise as he looked at Rogue. Vexar kits are Empire military property. Having one without permission is a serious crime. You must give the creature to me now. Jake felt Rogue tense in his arms. The kit's claws came out slightly. A low growl came from its chest. It was protecting him. Rogue was defending Jake. This kit was thrown away in a condemned area and left to die. Someone from your empire treated it like garbage. As far as I am concerned, that makes it salvage under frontier law. I saved its life. I am keeping it. Officer Krill's hand moved toward his weapon. That is not your choice to make, human. Give me the creature now, or I will take it by force. What happened next would become a famous story in the frontier systems. Rogue jumped from Jake's arms faster than seemed possible. The kit hit Officer Krill right in the chest. All 4 eyes were burning with anger. Claws that had been tiny days ago were now sharp like knives. They tore through the officer's uniform. Krill fell backward. His weapon flew from his hand. Rogue's jaws closed on his scaled arm. Jake grabbed Rogue before things got worse. He pulled the angry kit back. Officer Krill stared in shock at his torn uniform and the deep cuts on his arm. His scales had turned almost white with fear. You have made a big mistake, human. The Empire will hear about this. That creature is dangerous. You will both be dealt with. Jake held Rogue close. He could feel the kit's fast heartbeat. Rogue had defended him, had chosen him as pack. There was no going back now. Then you better bring more soldiers next time. Because this kid is mine, and I do not give up what is mine. The Dawn Runner left the station and jumped to hyperspace. Jake knew he had just declared war on the most powerful military in the galaxy. But as he looked down at Rogue, who had calmed down and was looking up at him with complete trust in those 4 eyes, he could not feel sorry about it. The Kryn Empire would soon learn what humans had known for thousands of years. You do not mess with someone's family. 6 months had passed since Jake found Rogue in that old warehouse. The galaxy was starting to pay attention. The incident at Frontier Station 12 had been reported to the Kryn Empire leaders. But the Empire moved slowly. Jake used that time well. He stayed on the move and kept to the outer edges of space where Empire control was weak. Rogue had grown a lot. The kit that once fit in Jake's arms now stood almost 4 feet tall at the shoulder. Its body was about 6 feet long. The black fur had developed the silver stripes that marked adult Vexar. The smaller eyes had become more prominent. They gave Rogue better side vision. It was almost impossible to sneak up on the predator now. But what amazed Jake most was how smart Rogue was. One evening, they were hiding near a gas giant to avoid an Empire patrol ship. Jake found Rogue studying the navigation screen with intense focus. The Vexar's 4 eyes tracked the holographic display of star positions. When Jake planned their next jump, Rogue made a chirping sound and pointed with one clawed hand at a different route. Jake looked at where Rogue was pointing. The route would add half a day to their trip, but it would avoid 3 known Empire checkpoints. The young Vexar had not only understood the navigation system, Rogue had also been paying attention to Jake's efforts to stay hidden. You are smarter than most of the people I have worked with, Jake said, scratching the fur on Rogue's head. The Vexar leaned into the touch and made a sound between a purr and a rumble. Jake had learned this meant Rogue was happy. The bond between human and Vexar had grown into something special. Rogue was not a pet, not even close. The young predator had begun showing real problem-solving skills. When a door malfunction trapped Jake in the cargo bay during a pressure problem, Rogue figured out how to work the emergency override. That required using 3 separate controls in the right order. Jake had started teaching Rogue to communicate using pictures on his datapad. Within 2 weeks, Rogue could show complex needs and even say what it liked. The Vexar liked certain foods better than others. Rogue preferred sleeping in the engine room where it was warmest. And Rogue really did not like the automatic cargo robots that Jake used for loading. But with intelligence came questions Jake was not ready to answer. One night, Rogue came to Jake in the eating area with the datapad. The Vexar had pulled up an image of an adult Vexar soldier in full Empire armor. There were thousands of these images in the ship computer. Rogue tapped the image, then pointed at itself, then back at the image. The question was clear. Why am I not like them? Jake put down his coffee and looked at all 4 of Rogue's eyes. How could he explain being thrown away and making choices to a creature that thought in instinct and loyalty? How could he justify taking Rogue away from its own kind, even if that taking had saved its life? You are not like them because someone decided you did not fit their plan. They threw you away. But you know what? That was their loss. You are stronger because you had to survive on your own. And you chose me, Rogue. You chose to be here. To be part of this crew. That makes you family. Rogue studied him for a long moment. Then the Vexar reached out with one large paw and gently placed it on Jake's shoulder. The gesture was deliberate. It was very human, despite the alien body. Jake had to fight back sudden emotion. Yeah, buddy, we are family. The first real test of that family bond came 3 weeks later at a mining colony called New Sahara. Jake had taken a job to deliver medical supplies to the colony. It should have been simple. New Sahara was a frontier settlement barely 60 years old. Human colonists had built it hoping to make money from the asteroid belts. The colony existed in a gray area of the law. It was technically independent but paid protection money to the Kryn Empire to avoid trouble. When the Dawn Runner landed, Jake knew something was wrong. The usual busy activity was gone. The hangar was almost empty. The few colonists he saw were moving quickly and nervously. He left Rogue on the ship with strict orders to stay hidden. Then he went to find the colony leader, a woman named Lisa Grant who ran New Sahara with practical efficiency. He found her in the control center, surrounded by security screens showing empty streets. Jake. Thank God. Lisa's face showed exhaustion. We have a big problem. The Kryn Empire raised their protection fees by 400%. When we could not pay, they sent enforcers. Half the people have already left. The rest are too poor to evacuate. Jake's jaw tightened. Enforcers. That was the Empire's word for hired thugs who did the dirty work regular soldiers would not do. They were probably the same kind of people who had dumped Rogue to die. How many enforcers? 20, maybe more. They set up in the old refinery on the south side. They say we have to pay by tomorrow morning or they start taking apart our life support systems. People will die, Jake. Jake should have walked away. This was not his fight. Getting involved with Empire enforcers would bring more trouble than he already had. But he thought about the colonists. Just ordinary people trying to survive, being squeezed by an empire that saw them only as money sources. He thought about Rogue, thrown away because someone decided the kit was inconvenient. I will see what I can do. Jake went back to the Dawn Runner and found Rogue waiting at the door. The Vexar knew right away that something was wrong. Those 4 eyes studied Jake's face, reading the tension in his body. We have a problem, Jake said, pulling up a map of the colony on his datapad. There are bad people here. The kind who hurt others for money. They are threatening innocent people. I need to stop them, Rogue growled, low and dangerous. The Vexar understood threats. It was built into its DNA. Jake hesitated, then made a choice that would change everything. I need your help, but this is dangerous. These are the same kind of people who left you to die. If you want to stay here where it is safe, I understand. Rogue's response was immediate. The Vexar moved to the weapons locker that Jake kept locked in the cargo bay. Rogue placed one large paw on the door. The message was clear. We go together. Jake felt pride and fear fight in his chest. Rogue was not fully grown yet. Maybe 2/3 the size of an adult Vexar, but already powerful. And more importantly, Rogue trusted him enough to follow into danger. All right then, let me show you how humans fight back. The refinery was a maze of machines and storage tanks. Perfect for an ambush. Jake scouted the area and found where the enforcers were positioned. They were all Kryn, armed with Empire energy weapons and wearing light armor. They had grown careless. They expected no fight from desperate colonists. They had not planned for a human and his Vexar. Jake set himself up on a metal walkway overlooking the main courtyard where most of the enforcers had gathered. Rogue circled around through the shadows below. The Vexar moved silently despite its size. They had set their watches to the same time. When the moment came, they would attack together. The enforcers were laughing and passing around a bottle of alcohol. They were celebrating their easy extortion. Their leader, a scarred Kryn named Vask, was talking about what he would do to the colony leader if they did not pay. He never got to finish the story. Jake opened fire with his plasma rifle. His shots were precise from years of surviving in dangerous space. 3 enforcers went down before the others even knew they were under attack. Chaos erupted as the rest scrambled for cover trying to find the shooter. That was when Rogue struck. The Vexar burst from the shadows like a nightmare come to life. Rogue moved faster than anything that big should move. The first enforcer was sent flying into a storage tank with bone-breaking force. The second enforcer raised his weapon before Rogue's claws ripped it from his hands along with 2 fingers. Jake had read about Vexar combat abilities. Seeing it in person was different. Rogue moved through the enforcers like a force of nature, all tooth and claw and raw fury, but it was not mindless violence. Every strike was calculated. Every movement had purpose. Rogue was protecting, defending, doing what Vexar evolution had programmed into its DNA for millions of years. The fight was over in less than 3 minutes. Half the enforcers were knocked out. The rest had run into the desert, leaving their equipment and their leader behind. Vask lay on the ground with Rogue's jaws inches from his throat. The Vexar's 4 eyes blazed with barely controlled violence. Jake came down from the walkway calmly. Rogue held position but did not bite. The Vexar was waiting for Jake's command. The level of trust and control the young Vexar showed was extraordinary. Jake crouched down next to Vask. The enforcer leader was breathing hard. His scales were pale with fear. Tell your Empire bosses that New Sahara is off limits. If they send more of you, you will get the same treatment. And Vask, if I ever hear about you threatening civilians again, I will let my friend here finish what we started. Understand? Vask nodded frantically. Jake signaled to Rogue. The Vexar stepped back, releasing the enforcer. Vask scrambled to his feet and ran, disappearing into the desert after his fleeing men. As Jake watched them go, he realized what they had just done. They had not just defended a colony. They had sent a message to the Kryn Empire that would spread through every frontier system. A human and his Vexar were a force to fear. News of what happened at New Sahara spread through the frontier networks within days. The story grew bigger with each telling. Some versions said Jake had an army of Vexar. Others said Rogue was 10 feet. The underground data broker went by the name Cypher. Meeting them required 3 layers of encryption, 2 secret message drops, and finally a face-to-face meeting in the lower levels of Station Liberty. This massive space habitat served as the unofficial capital of the frontier. Jake had spent 2 weeks tracking down leads, using every favor he had built up over years of freelance work, before finally getting this meeting. He left Rogue on the Dawn Runner with strict orders to stay hidden. The Vexar had grown to nearly full adult size now. Standing 7 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing close to 600 pounds, Rogue's presence tended to attract exactly the kind of attention Jake was trying to avoid. Cypher turned out to be a Cellin, a species of amphibious humanoids known for their perfect memory and obsessive record-keeping. They sat across from Jake in a dirty bar. Their bulbous eyes did not blink as they reviewed information on their datapad. You want to know about Project Apex? That is dangerous knowledge, Captain Morrison. The kind that gets people disappeared. I already have the Empire trying to kill me. What is one more threat? Cypher made a wet clicking sound that might have been laughter. Fair point, very well. I will tell you what I know, but it will cost you 20,000 credits. Jake did not have 20,000 credits. He barely had 8,000 after the modifications he had made to the Dawn Runner. But he needed this information, 10,000 now. 10,000 after I checked that the information is real. Cypher thought about this, then nodded. Acceptable. Transferring the data now. The files that appeared on Jake's datapad painted a picture far worse than he had imagined. Project Apex had been a secret Kryn Empire program, started 25 years ago. The goal was to create the ultimate military force by selectively breeding and genetically changing Vexar warriors. The program had started with normal breeding, selecting the strongest and smartest Vexar for reproduction. But as years passed, the scientists running Project Apex had begun experimenting with genetic modifications, trying to enhance the Vexar's already impressive natural abilities. Most of the test subjects had died. The modifications were too aggressive. They caused organ failure or brain damage, but a few had survived. And of those survivors, one had shown unprecedented intelligence and adaptability. Designation: Subject 7 Alpha, born 3 years ago. Genetic profile shows enhancements to brain pathways, muscle density, and metabolism. Subject displays problem-solving abilities far exceeding normal Vexar parameters. Recommended for immediate termination due to unpredictable behavior patterns. Jake stared at the file entry. His stomach churned. Subject 7 Alpha, Rogue. They had tried to kill Rogue because the kit was too smart, too unpredictable. The scientists had been afraid of what they had created, so they had drugged the juvenile Vexar and dumped it in that abandoned warehouse to die, hoping to bury their mistake along with the evidence. But Rogue had survived, and now the Empire was desperate to get back or eliminate the only successful product of their illegal genetic experiment program. There is more, Cypher said, interrupting Jake's thoughts. Project Apex was shut down 6 months ago after an inspection by the Imperial Ethics Board. All subjects were supposed to be terminated. But the facility director, a scientist named Dr. Vrel, disappeared along with several research files. The Empire has been searching for him ever since. Why would he take the files? Leverage, probably, or guilt. The reports I accessed suggest Dr. Vrel had developed ethical opposition to the project near the end. He may have been trying to expose what the Empire was doing. Jake's mind was racing. If he could find Dr. Vrel, he might be able to get proof of Project Apex's existence and the Empire's illegal activities. That information could be used as leverage. Protection against further attacks. More importantly, Vrel might have information about Rogue's genetic changes and what they meant for the future. Where is Dr. Vrel now? Unknown, but I have a lead. 3 weeks ago, a scientist matching his description bought supplies from a black market dealer on the moon Thalos 7. The dealer said the scientist seemed interested in biological research equipment. Jake transferred the remaining 10,000 credits to Cypher's account. He left the bar with a new destination in mind. Thalos 7 was a frozen wasteland on the edge of explored space. Barely livable. Home to nothing but automatic mining operations and a handful of desperate settlers. It was exactly the kind of place someone would go to disappear. When Jake returned to the Dawn Runner and explained what he had learned, Rogue's reaction was unexpected. The Vexar became agitated, pacing back and forth in the cargo bay, making distressed sounds Jake had never heard before. Jake used the picture communication system they had developed. Hey, it is okay. Whatever they did to you, whatever experiments they ran, it does not change who you are. You are still you. You are still my partner. My family. But Rogue was not just upset. The Vexar was afraid. Through the pictures and gestures, Jake finally understood what was troubling his companion. Rogue was worried that the genetic modifications made the Vexar a weapon. Something dangerous that might hurt Jake by accident. The depth of that concern struck Jake hard. Here was a creature engineered to be a perfect killing machine, and its greatest fear was accidentally harming the person it loved. You have never hurt me, not once. You have saved my life more times than I can count. Whatever those scientists did, they did not take away your choice. You chose to be good. You chose to be loyal. That is all that matters. Rogue gradually calmed down, but the fear did not entirely leave those 4 eyes. Jake made a silent promise then. He would find Dr. Vrel and get answers. Not just for himself, but for Rogue. The Vexar deserved to know the truth about what had been done and what it meant for the future. The trip to Thalos 7 took 5 days through dangerous hyperspace routes. Jake kept the Dawn Runner running dark, avoiding main shipping lanes and Empire patrol zones. Every jump felt like pushing their luck, but they made it without problems. Thalos 7 was every bit as miserable as Jake expected. The moon's surface was covered in ice and hit by constant storms. The main settlement consisted of a dozen pressurized habitats clustered around a heat vent. Population maybe 200. all of them too desperate or too crazy to live anywhere else. Jake left Rogue on the ship again and made his way to the settlement's only bar, a dingy place called the Frozen Hell. If anyone knew about strangers on Thalos 7, it would be the bartender. The bartender was human, surprisingly. A tough-looking woman named Kate, who had been running the place for 15 years. She sized Jake up with experienced eyes and poured him a drink without being asked. "You are looking for the scientist." It was not a question. Jake nodded. "You know where he is? Maybe. Depends on why you want to find him. Empire sent a team here 2 weeks ago asking the same question. I sent them away with nothing. They were not polite about it. I am not with the Empire. I need his help. He worked on a project that affected someone I care about. I just want answers." Kate studied him for a long moment. Then she pulled out a datapad and showed him a map of the moon's surface. "There is a research station about 50 kilometers north of here, abandoned for 10 years. Someone has been drawing power from our grid in that direction. Could be your scientist, could be something else. Either way, it is a dangerous trip. The storms will tear apart anything not built to handle them." Jake studied the map, memorizing the route. "Thank you." Kate waved off his thanks. "Just do me a favor. If you find him, tell him Kate says he still owes me for the supplies. And if the Empire comes back looking, I never saw you." The trip to the research station was terrible. Jake and Rogue took a ground vehicle designed for ice travel, but the storms hit them hard. Wind speeds over 200 kilometers per hour. Visibility near zero. Twice they had to stop and wait out the worst weather, huddled in the vehicle while ice hammered the hull. But Rogue's presence made it bearable. The Vexar stayed close, offering warmth and company in the frozen hell. They had been through so much together that even this felt manageable. When they finally reached the research station, Jake was surprised to find it in relatively good condition. Someone had been maintaining the facility, keeping the power running and life support functional. Lights glowed from the windows, barely visible through the driving snow. Jake approached the main airlock carefully with Rogue at his side. Before he could knock, the airlock opened. Standing in the entrance was an older Kryn male with scales that had faded to pale gray. He wore a simple lab coat and carried no weapons. Dr. Vrel, I presume. The scientist looked at Jake, then at Rogue. His eyes widened with recognition and something that might have been joy or relief. Subject, 7 Alpha. You survived. I had hoped but did not dare believe. Please come inside. We have much to discuss. Dr. Vrel's research station was filled with laboratory equipment, data servers, and living quarters that had been turned into a makeshift archive. The scientist moved through the space with nervous energy. He gathered datapads and holographic projectors while Jake and Rogue stood awkwardly near the entrance. I have been waiting for someone to find me, Vrel said. His voice carried the weight of loneliness and guilt. Part of me hoped it would be the Empire so I could finally face justice for what I helped create. But seeing you together, seeing 7 Alpha alive and healthy, I realized there might be another path. Rogue is not 7 Alpha anymore, Jake said firmly. The name is Rogue, and I need you to tell me everything about Project Apex. What did you do to Rogue? What are the long-term effects? Vrel motioned for them to sit. Then he turned on a holographic display. Images of DNA sequences, brain maps, and biological diagrams filled the air between them. Project Apex was designed to create superior soldiers. The Kryn Empire has always relied heavily on Vexar shock troops, but traditional breeding methods took decades to produce results. We were tasked with speeding up the process through genetic modification. The hologram shifted, showing a timeline of the project. Vrel continued. We made 347 attempts. 346 resulted in either stillbirth or rapid death. Only Rogue survived. The modifications we made enhanced brain pathways, increasing intelligence and learning capacity by about 300%. We also strengthened skeletal structure, improved muscle fiber density, and enhanced metabolism. Rogue is stronger, faster, and smarter than any natural Vexar. Jake looked at Rogue. The Vexar was watching the holographic display with intense focus. Those 4 eyes tracked every detail, but there were problems. Vrel's voice dropped. The enhanced intelligence made Rogue unpredictable. Unlike normal Vexar, who respond well to conditioning and commands, Rogue showed independent thinking, questioning behavior, and something we had not expected. Empathy. Emotional bonds formed quickly and deeply. but not with handlers or trainers. Rogue rejected all attempts at military conditioning. Because Rogue is not a weapon, Jake said. Rogue is a person. You gave a thinking being superintelligence and then tried to force it to be a mindless soldier. Of course that failed. Vrel's scales shifted to darker gray, a sign of shame in Kryn body language. You are correct, Captain Morrison. By the time I realized what we had truly created, it was too late. The project director ordered Rogue's termination. I argued against it but was overruled. That night I drugged Rogue and moved the kit to Station Kepler 9. I told myself I was giving Rogue a chance. That maybe someone would find and help the kit before the drugs wore off and cold killed it. The scientist looked at Jake with genuine regret. I did not have the courage to do more. I abandoned Rogue, hoping someone braver would finish what I could not. For that I'm sorry. Rogue approached Dr. Vrel slowly. The Vexar was massive now, towering over the aging scientist. For a moment Jake tensed, unsure what Rogue intended. Then the Vexar did something unexpected. Rogue extended one large paw and gently touched Vrel's shoulder. It was the same gesture Jake had taught Rogue, the one that meant understanding and forgiveness. Vrel looked at the paw, then up at Rogue's 4 eyes. The scientist's own eyes were wet with emotion. You should have died. Instead you thrived. You found a family. You became more than we ever intended. I do not deserve your forgiveness, maybe not, Jake said. But here is your chance to make it right. You said you have been waiting for someone to find you. Well, we found you. Now help us. The Empire is still hunting us. I need leverage to make them stop. You have proof of Project Apex's illegal activities. Give it to me. I will make sure the galaxy knows what the Kryn Empire did. Vrel hesitated. If I give you this information, the Empire will declare me a traitor. I will be hunted for the rest of my life. You are already hunted. At least this way your running will mean something. Help us end this. The scientist looked at Rogue again, at the living proof that something good could come from terrible mistakes. Then he nodded and began transferring files to Jake's datapad. Take it all. Every experiment, every failure, every ethical violation. Expose them. Make them pay for what they did. The data transfer took 3 hours. During that time, Vrel explained everything about Rogue's modifications and what they meant for the future. The enhanced metabolism meant Rogue would live longer than normal Vexar, possibly twice the natural lifespan. The improved brain pathways would continue developing, making Rogue increasingly intelligent as years passed. And the emotional capacity, the ability to form deep bonds, would only strengthen. Rogue is not just a better soldier, Vrel concluded. Rogue is an evolutionary step forward for the Vexar species. In trying to create a weapon, we accidentally created something far more valuable. A bridge between predator instinct and higher thinking. When the transfer was done, Jake offered Dr. Vrel a choice. You can stay here and hide, or you can come with us. Help us fight back against the Empire. Use your knowledge to make things right. Vrel looked around his lonely research station. Then at Jake and Rogue standing together. The choice was obvious. I will come. But I warn you, Captain Morrison, the Empire will not stop. High Commander Zareth has too much invested in recovering or eliminating Rogue. They will send everything they have. Then we better be ready. The trip back to civilized space was tense. Jake, Rogue, and Dr. Vrel spent the time planning their next move. The data from Project Apex was damning, but releasing it would require careful strategy. They needed to ensure maximum exposure while protecting themselves from immediate payback. Jake reached out to every contact he had in the frontier networks. Every journalist, every independent news service, every political rebel who might help spread the information. Within 48 hours, Project Apex was the biggest story in the galaxy. The Kryn Empire's response was predictable. They denied everything. They claimed the documents were fake and doubled down on efforts to capture Jake and Rogue. But the evidence was too strong, too detailed. Independent scientists checked the genetic data. Former Project Apex employees came forward with supporting testimony. The scandal shook the Empire's government. High Commander Zareth was forced to resign. The Imperial Ethics Board launched formal investigations, and most importantly, the frontier systems began openly defying Empire authority. They cited Project Apex as proof of government corruption, but Jake knew the fight was not over. The Empire might be wounded, but it was still dangerous, and there were elements within the government that would never forgive or forget. The final confrontation came 3 weeks after the Project Apex revelations, on a planet called Haven's End. The world was home to a large human colony that had declared independence from both Earth and the Kryn Empire. It was as safe as anywhere could be for fugitives like Jake and Rogue. They were in the colony's main settlement when the Empire forces arrived. Not a small strike team this time. A full military battalion with air support and heavy armor. The colony's defense forces were outmatched and outgunned. Jake stood on the roof of the colony administration building, watching the Empire forces deploy in perfect formation. Rogue was beside him, fully armored in custom gear that Dr. Vrel had designed. The Vexar looked like a war god, 7.5 feet of muscle and fury ready to be released. "We could run," Jake said quietly. "Take the Dawn Runner and jump to hyperspace before they lock down the system." Rogue looked at him with those 4 intelligent eyes. Then the Vexar used the communication device they now had, a sophisticated system that translated Rogue's gestures and sounds into text. The message appeared on Jake's datapad. "No more running. We stand, we fight. We protect." Jake felt pride surge through him. Rogue had grown from a terrified kid into a warrior, not because of genetic modifications or military conditioning, but because of choice, because of love and loyalty and the bond they had built together. "All right then, let us show them what we have learned." The battle for Haven's End became legendary in frontier history. Jake and Rogue fought alongside the colony's defenders, using every tactic, every trick, every advantage they had developed over months of avoiding Empire forces. Rogue's enhanced abilities were devastating in combat. The Vexar moved through enemy lines like a force of nature, disabling vehicles, destroying equipment, and sending soldiers running in terror. But it was not just physical strength that won the day. Rogue's intelligence allowed coordination with human defenders, adapting tactics in real time and exploiting weaknesses in the Empire's formation. Jake watched in awe as Rogue directed fire teams with gestures and sounds, turning a desperate defense into a coordinated counterattack. The Empire forces were not prepared for this level of resistance. They had expected a simple extraction operation, not a full battle against determined colonists led by a genetically enhanced Vexar who fought with the tactical awareness of a trained general. When the dust settled, the Empire battalion had retreated, leaving behind destroyed vehicles and wounded soldiers. The colonists had won, but more importantly, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. The Kryn Empire could be beaten. In the aftermath, Jake stood with Rogue looking out over the colony. People were celebrating in the streets, grateful for their unexpected. High Commander Zareth stared at the 3-word response on his command screen. Around him, the bridge of the Imperial battlecruiser Devastation hummed with activity. Officers moved between stations, managing a military force that covered dozens of star systems. But right now, Zareth's entire focus was on the insolent human who had dared to challenge the Empire. Tactical Officer Kryn spoke, his scaled face showing no emotion. "Sir, we have traced the transmission. The human is currently in the Epsilon sector, about 4 light-years from our position. We can have a strike team there within 6 hours." Zareth's clawed hand tapped against his command chair. This had gone beyond simple theft. Morrison's actions at New Sahara had embarrassed Imperial enforcers. It had made frontier colonists bold enough to resist taxation. Reports were coming in from a dozen systems of similar resistance. All of them mentioned the human and his Vexar as inspiration. This was no longer about getting back stolen property. It was about making an example. Deploy Strike Team 7, full combat authorization. Capture the human and the Vexar. I want them both brought here alive. Morrison will face Imperial justice. The Vexar will be reconditioned or terminated. The orders went out within minutes. Strike Team 7 was the Empire's elite unit. Veteran Kryn soldiers who had served in suppression campaigns across the frontier. They had the latest weapons, armor, and tracking technology. Against one human freighter pilot and an untrained Vexar juvenile, they should have been overwhelming force. They were not prepared for what Jake and Rogue had become. Jake knew they were coming. He had enough contacts in the frontier networks to get early warning when Empire military forces started moving with purpose. The Dawn Runner was fast, but a battlecruiser was faster. Running would only delay what was coming, so Jake did not run. Instead, he prepared. The Epsilon sector was home to the Belt, a huge asteroid field that had once been good for mining before the resources ran out. Now it was mostly empty, a maze of rock and debris that messed with sensors and made navigation dangerous. It was perfect for what Jake had in mind. He brought the Dawn Runner deep into the belt and landed on a large asteroid with enough mass to hide their heat signature. Then he and Rogue went to work. Over the next 4 hours, they turned the surrounding asteroids into a deadly trap. Jake had enough mining explosives in his cargo hold to destroy a small moon. He rigged charges at key points, creating traps that would turn floating rock into deadly fragments. He set up emergency beacons to make false signals that would confuse sensors. Rogue helped, using natural problem-solving abilities to find the best ambush positions. The young Predator had an instinctive understanding of terrain and tactical advantage. Jake found this both impressive and slightly scary. Rogue was still learning, still growing, but already showing the kind of strategic thinking that made adult Vexar such dangerous opponents. When Strike Team 7 arrived in the Epsilon sector, their commander was very confident. Squad leader Krex had run dozens of successful operations against frontier resistance. In his mind, this would be a simple job. Find the human ship, disable it, and bring the fugitives back to the devastation. The first sign something was wrong came when their scanners started picking up multiple heat signatures scattered through the belt. The tactical display showed what looked like dozens of ships, all sending out the Dawn Runner's identification code. Impossible. The human only has one ship. These must be decoys. Krex ordered the team to split up and check each signature. It was standard procedure for dealing with false signals. But as his soldiers moved deeper into the belt, navigating between asteroids, the first trap went off. An explosion ripped through an asteroid cluster, sending pieces flying in all directions. 2 of Krex's soldiers were caught in the blast. Their armor was pierced by rock moving at speeds that shamed most bullets. The screams over the comm channel were brief. Krex immediately ordered his remaining troops to regroup. But more traps activated. Asteroids rigged with charges exploded in sequence, creating a chain reaction that turned the belt into a killing field. The strike team's advanced armor could handle energy weapons, but it was never designed to take hits from multi-ton rocks. In the chaos, Jake and Rogue moved like ghosts through the debris. Jake had equipped himself with a zero-gravity thruster pack. He used it to navigate between asteroids with practiced ease. Rogue had taken to zero gravity with disturbing enthusiasm. The Vexar used powerful leg muscles to jump between rocks with missile precision. They hit the scattered strike team members one by one, never giving the soldiers time to coordinate. Jake's plasma rifle accounted for 3 kills, precise headshots that punched through helmet visors. Rogue was even more effective, using speed and surprise to tear through armor with those razor claws. Within 20 minutes, Strike Team 7 had been cut to half its original strength. The survivors had regrouped around Krex, forming a defensive position on a large asteroid, but they were trapped, surrounded by unstable debris fields, unable to advance without triggering more traps. Krex had never experienced anything like this. The human was using guerrilla tactics with devastating efficiency. The Vexar was proving far more dangerous than any juvenile should be. Worse, they were working in perfect coordination, anticipating each other's movements, covering each other's weaknesses. It was like fighting a pack, not 2 individuals. Jake floated into view using an asteroid for cover while keeping his rifle trained on the huddled strike team. His voice came across the open comm channel. Calm and almost conversational. You can still leave. Take what is left of your team and go back to your ship. Tell your commander this is not worth it. Rogue is not a piece of property. I am not going to hand my family over to people who threw a child away to die. Krex's response was predictable. We do not negotiate with criminals. Surrender now or we will be forced to use lethal measures. Jake sighed. That is what I thought. The final attack came from an unexpected direction. Rogue had circled around behind the strike team's position, moving through a narrow channel between asteroids that the soldiers had dismissed as too small. The Vexar's flexible skeleton let it squeeze through gaps that would have stopped a Kryn soldier. When Rogue burst from cover, the strike team's defensive formation collapsed. The soldiers were forced to split their attention between Jake in front and the raging Vexar behind. It was exactly the mistake Jake had been waiting for. He set off the final charges he had placed around the asteroid's edge. The explosions did not kill anyone directly, but they sent the entire rock tumbling. This disrupted the low gravity and threw the soldiers into chaos. In that moment of confusion, Jake and Rogue struck with coordinated precision. When the dust cleared, squad leader Krex found himself alone. His team was either dead or unconscious, floating in space. Jake had him at gunpoint while Rogue circled menacingly. Those four eyes gleamed with predatory intent. "You lost," Jake said flatly. "Now you are going to deliver a message for me. Tell High Commander Zareth that every time he sends people after us, this is what will happen. The Empire can keep sending soldiers. I will keep sending them back in pieces. Or they can accept that Rogue chose a different life and leave us alone. The choice is theirs." Krek stared at him through his cracked visor. "You cannot fight the Empire forever, human. They will keep coming. Maybe. But I only need to win each fight once. You need to win every time. Those are not good odds for you." Jake disabled Krex's weapons and equipment. Then he sent him drifting back toward where the strike team's shuttle was anchored. The surviving soldiers would make it back to the devastation with their wounded, and they would tell their story. As Jake and Rogue returned to the Dawn Runner, the Vexar was practically shaking with excitement. The combat had awakened something primal in Rogue, the natural hunting instincts of a species that had fought its way to the top of Vexaris Prime's deadly food chain. But there was also pride in those four eyes, satisfaction at having protected Jake, at having fulfilled the pack-bonding drive. "We make a good team," Jake said, checking Rogue for injuries and finding only minor scratches. "You did great out there. I am proud of you." Rogue leaned against him, a gesture of affection that was distinctly dog-like despite the alien body. Jake wrapped an arm around the Vexar's muscular neck, feeling the warmth of the living creature he had saved and who had saved him in return. But as the Dawn Runner left the Epsilon sector behind, Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would not stop. They could not afford to, not with their authority being challenged so publicly, and eventually they would send enough force that even Jake and Rogue's skills would not be enough. He needed allies. He needed a plan. Most of all, he needed to find out why Rogue had been abandoned in the first place. Because Jake was beginning to suspect there was more to this story than simple disposal of a defective military asset. Someone had tried to kill Rogue for a reason, and Jake was going to find out what that reason was.